Welcome to Dead by Daylight's 15th chapter, known as Chains of Hate. This update included one new survivor, one new killer, and a new map. I'll be going over the perks included in this chapter, and also give a bit of a retrospective for what these new characters and map brought to the game. Chains of Hate brought us a new survivor named Zarina Kassir. Zarina is a documentarist/filmmaker dedicated to exposing the injustices of the world after her father was murdered. The entity snatches Zarina when she is following a lead at Hellshire Penitentiary. The killer of this chapter is the Deathslinger, a genius engineer turned outlaw who designed his own weapon, the Redeemer. The Deathslinger is on a path of vengeance, hoping to exact retribution on the many people who wronged him. The entity takes the Deathslinger after he finally gets revenge on the men he hates the most after a brutal altercation at Hellshire Penitentiary. Lastly, the chapter introduces a new map known as Dawg Saloon, a new realm set in a western frontier town. The Deathslinger's appearance is some of Behavior's best work so far. I think they did an amazing job pushing the cowboy/western theme of the chapter, while also adding in some of that horror flair required for a game like Dead by Daylight. This shot from Deathslinger's trailer is genuinely unnerving. His busted jaw and cold, dead stare make the Deathslinger quite unsettling. Deathslinger also has some awesome skins in the in-game store. I particularly love this Outlaw skin where he almost looks like more like a bar or gambler type. I think that the name Deathslinger is still kind of odd. I think a much cooler name would have been the Outlaw, but what can you do? I'll cover more about Deathslinger's aesthetics in-game later on in the video. Chains of Hate is no different from most chapter releases for DBD. Zarina and the Deathslinger both bring 3 new perks for survivors and killers to add to their loadouts. Zarina's first perk is Red Herring. After repairing a generator for a bit, you can get in a locker to cause that generator to show a fake noise notification to the killer, creating a literal red herring in-game. It's okay. I mean, the effect is neat, but like a similar distraction perk, it can oftentimes be pretty easy for the killer to tell whether it's real or not. If you really want to take a distraction type perk, I would recommend Diversion over this one. Red Herring can potentially waste more of the killer's time, but Diversion has the advantage of being applicable in more situations, and is even possible to use mid-chase to escape the killer. Zarina's next perk is Off the Record. When you are unhooked by any means, including yourself, the perk activates for 80 seconds, causing you to make no pain noises while injured. The perk also prevents your aura from being shown during this time. Honestly, the perk is alright. A lot of people immediately write the perk off for not being Iron Will, but I think it does have some uses. The immunity to aura reading is pretty awesome, but is obviously quite situational depending on what build/perks the killer has. That being said, Iron Will is still the superior choice by far due to its consistency. Unfortunately, Off the Record won't be up every moment you are injured like Iron Will is, so there isn't much reason to run Off the Record over Iron Will. I mean, it's kind of your choice. Zarina's last perk is For the People. While you're at full health, you can instantly heal one health state of another survivor, but doing so causes you to become injured and gain the Broken status effect for 90 seconds, preventing you from being healed. Activating the perk also causes the user to become the Obsession. Many players, including myself, were worried about this perk before the chapter came out, thinking that it might be overpowered, but it actually ended up being quite balanced. For the People is very strong in certain situations, but it will always have the drawback of harming the user in the process. It has the potential to create some big plays, and it's a quite solid perk overall. The Deathslinger's first perk is Gearhead. After hitting survivors with a basic attack 2 times, the perk activates for 30 seconds. During that time, if a survivor gets a good skill check on a gen, that gen is then revealed to you in a yellow aura, similar to the killer perk Discordance. This perk is pretty bad. On paper, it looks like a good tracking perk, but it has so many drawbacks and restrictions that prevent it from getting used very often. Also, for some reason that I cannot fathom, this perk was nerfed from the original PTB version. Even before the nerf, the perk was still quite lackluster, so I really don't know why Behavior decided to nerf it. If you want a gen tracking perk, stick to Discordance. This one is just bad. Slinger's next perk is Dead Man's Switch. After hooking the Obsession, the perk activates for 45 seconds. During that time, the entity immediately blocks a gen if a survivor gets off it, and that gen remains blocked until the perk deactivates. This is another one that sounds good in theory, but just isn't very good in practice. Even if you hook your obsession all the way to their death, the perk only activates 3 times a game. Plus, once survivors know you have Dead Man Switch, they can pretty easily play around it by just sticking on a gen until the perk deactivates. The only way you can get this perk to activate a bunch of times is in weird obsession-based builds that include perks like Nemesis or Furtive Chase that allow you to change the obsession at a moment's notice. Even then, the perk is still pretty outclassed by simple slowdown perks such as Corrupt Intervention or Pop Goes the Weasel. Good luck trying to make this perk work. Slinger's last perk is Hex Retribution. Anytime a survivor cleanses a Dull Totem, they gain the Oblivious status effect for 45 seconds, preventing them from hearing your terror radius. Also, if any Hex Totem is cleansed, including Retribution, all survivors' auras are revealed to you for 10 seconds. We hadn't gotten a Hex Totem perk in a while before this one, with the last one being Haunted Grounds, but this one does not disappoint at all. The Dull Totem effect alone is quite good and happens more than you'd think, with Inner Strength being a pretty popular perk right now. It also has a neat destruction effect, giving one last surprise when it is destroyed. That's something that you don't see often with Hex perks. Haunted Grounds still has a better destruction effect overall, but combining these 2 perks together creates quite a scary combo. If the survivors cleanse Haunted Grounds, they become exposed, but also have their auras revealed due to Retribution. In more totem-based builds, these perks make a really good combo. My only worry is that Retribution might become outclassed due to a certain totem perk being added to the game soon. I think it's probably about time to address that title, huh? Yeah, whenever this chapter came out, everyone was quite happy for a little while, with some even saying that Deathslinger should move at 115% movement speed instead of his current 110. As time passed though, many became more frustrated at Deathslinger's design, and it became increasingly obvious why. Deathslinger's power is his spear gun, of course, but how exactly does it work? As opposed to a killer like Huntress, Deathslinger's spear gun has a maximum range, that being 18 meters. One of the things that makes his weapon so good, however, is the speed at which his shots move. His shots from the spear gun move at 40 meters per second, or the equivalent of a fully charged Huntress hatchet. This doesn't sound too bad, but then you take into account that it takes, get this, 0.15 seconds to aim down his sights. This lets Deathslinger essentially instantly shoot you with almost no reaction time from the survivor's point of view. He is incredibly difficult to dodge, and it often feels like complete luck if you somehow do manage to dodge his attack. Like, seriously, sometimes I just feel bad. There's literally nothing she could do. That being said, I do think that the reeling mechanic he has is quite well designed in a lot of ways. The cinematic camera causes both the survivor and the Deathslinger to face each other, creating a pretty awesome standoff. The survivor tries to break free of the chain while the Deathslinger attempts to reel them in. If the chain breaks, or if the Deathslinger successfully reels the survivor in, they become injured and also acquire the Deep Wound status effect. Yeah, most people weren't super happy to see Deep Wound make a return. It is many people's least favorite part of the Legion, effectively causing the survivors to hold M1 for a little while to get rid of it. Aesthetically, it makes complete sense that Deathslinger's harpoon would cause a grievous wound, but it just leads to more frustration in-game, similarly to Legion. This killer also has a unique terror radius and chase music like most new killer editions. His terror radius is perfect, being one of my favorites in the game. I think his main chase theme is a little weaker, but if this makes sense, only from the survivor's point of view. The music they chose for a chase sounds perfect for the person playing Deathslinger, but I think there should be different chase music for the survivor and killer's point of view, like they did with the Oni previously. Deathslinger's power is very, very strong in a 1v1 chase scenario. His spear gun can hit survivors over windows, from far away, and even over certain pallet loops. It is quite difficult to avoid, causing Deathslinger to be a very strong killer in chase. Based on what I'm saying, he would sound broken, right? Well, not really. While his chase potential is insane, he very much lacks in map pressure. Being 110% movement speed, he has a hard time traversing some of DBD's largest maps, and in comparison to certain other 110 killers, he has no way to move quickly, or pressure areas that he isn't currently in due to the limited range of his spear gun. If you're wondering about a tier list type position, I would place him somewhere in the middle, or possibly even in the higher parts of a mid tier. He's a great killer, but does have potential downsides that prevent him from winning matches, regardless of how strong he is in a chase. For some reason, Deathslinger is also a pseudo-stealth killer. I'm not quite sure why they went this direction for a ranged killer, but Deathslinger has a 24 meter terror radius, much smaller than the standard 32 that many killers have. Also, many players run Monitor and Abuse on him to shrink that terror radius even more down to 16 meters. I could show so many different clips of me sneaking up on people as if I were Wraith, but I think the footage speaks for itself. He even has add-ons that decrease his terror radius further, but these only work when he is aiming down his sights. They aren't very good. Speaking of add-ons, his are pretty cool. Nothing immediately jumps out as, oh, this is absolutely insane, but many of them have solid effects that are worth running. Some of his nicest add-ons, in my opinion, are ones that shorten the reload time of his gun, and there are also ones that help with the cooldown on a missed shot. In short, he has quite balanced add-ons overall. Deathslinger, to put it very simply, is not at all fun to face as Survivor. You are often guessing when he might shoot, which pretty much gives the Deathslinger free zoning capabilities for simply existing. It is very rare that you feel safe facing him, in part due to the strength of his power and also because of his relatively small terror radius. Deathslinger isn't my least favorite killer to face ever, that going to a couple of other demons, but I understand why people don't like facing him. I found a lot of fun in playing Deathslinger. The reeling mechanic is pretty neat, and the precision of his weapon lets you go for some pretty fun shots, even if the following reel might not work out. The aesthetics of the killer feel awesome from both points of view. Deathslinger's weapon feels and sounds very rickety, both when shooting, reeling, and reloading. This helps bring out that industrialized western feel of the chapter. I also love the small bits of character you get from the Deathslinger in-game. He seems to be a quiet, almost reserved individual in the way that he laughs. You can still tell, however, that there is malice behind that laugh. He has a burning hatred deep down, hoping to exact revenge on all that have wronged him. His backstory reveals a lot more of this, but I'll want to save that for another time. Trust me, I do want to talk about DBD lore at some point.
My tooth! My fucking tooth!
This is real. Okay, I want to use this next section to rant about some of the frustrations of playing as Deathslinger. You really start to question why people move in certain ways. I mean, this Steve is running in a straight line, so surely I should just line up my shot as if he would keep running forward. And he stopped and started walking. Sometimes you have great games where you're hitting max range sharpshooter shots back to back, and then other games where you miss a default bill literally 3 times in a row. This one actually threaded the needle between 2 people, like how? Also, indoor maps. Not nearly as bad for Slinger compared to someone like Huntress, who becomes incapable of hitting long-range shots on those maps, but they still feel very claustrophobic for Slinger. Most of the time, the gameplay feels like but sometimes you can get some decent plays. Ran over. Anyways, hitting long-range shots is extremely satisfying. Have you ever hit a near max range shot on a Steve running at Mach 10 from a balanced landing speed boost? It feels awesome, even if it is often difficult or straight up impossible to reel a Survivor from far away. One last thing I want to touch on is his Mori, and wow, it's brutal. The Survivor makes this horrible gagging sound at the end of it, perfectly fitting for this malicious criminal. This map is pretty awesome. Dead Dog Saloon is some of behavior's best work in the aesthetic department. The map is gorgeous and perfectly evokes the feeling of a run-down western frontier town. Vultures are present on the map alongside the usual crows. There are even little tumbleweeds blowing across the wide open spaces of the center of the map. Dead Dawg Saloon also presents a stunning sunset. The sky on this map is amazing, perfectly displaying the beauty of a southern night. It even has a unique background outside the map, as opposed to the usual vague nothingness. Dead Dawg shows unique landscapes, including things like hills and canyons, perfectly fitting with the theme of the map. It also features the obvious things you would expect from a cowboy map, such as a saloon serving as the main building, and a gallows area that actually opens its trapdoors whenever the generator is completed there. One other great detail is a unique exit gate. The only other unique exit gate is on Hawkins' laboratory for the Stranger Things chapter, so it was a welcome surprise to see a different exit gate here. This one takes inspiration from a steampunk-esque aesthetic that I think works really well. The exit gates even emit smoke from their chimneys when they are powered up, letting survivors know where to go from far away. The map is also one of the smallest maps in the game, which I think is a good thing. A lot of DBD's most egregious maps are ones that are gigantic, so I'm not opposed to them moving away from that design with maps. Dead Dawg Saloon was also the first map to introduce an entirely new mechanic, breakable walls. These basically act like pre-drop pallets. Killers can break them after a short animation, similarly to a pallet. Breakable walls open up a new layer of depth to how games play out. Some walls are worth breaking to make it easier on the killer, while others should probably be left alone unless you want to open up a more powerful looping spot. Their implementation on this map works very well, and it's a big reason for a lot of the balancing of the map. The main building Saloon, for example, is a very powerful structure for survivors, but it becomes a lot less strong once the killer breaks the major problem walls in the building. This gives the killer the option of waiting to break the walls later, or to just get them out of the way immediately at the start of a match. It is not at all uncommon for a killer to scurry their way over to the Saloon right away at the beginning of a trial. To sum it up, this chapter was frustrating for a lot of people. I think many, myself included, really want to like Deathslinger, but he can be so frustrating to face that it's hard to really like him. He's fun to play, but that's about it. This chapter didn't bring any super interesting perks to the game, but the new map is quite cool. If you want to purchase this chapter, I'd recommend it if you think you'll enjoy playing as Deathslinger, but if you're only in it for the perks, there are definitely better options. Thank you for watching. This is my first video, but there's definitely more to come later. I want to cover more aspects of Dead by Daylight and possibly even create videos for other games too. Let me know if there's anything in particular you want to see next. Until next time, farewell.